Welcome to the C Analysis Podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Nuttycombe, the Director of C Analysis. Today, I am joined by Delegate Elizabeth Guzman. She is running to become the next Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Delegate Guzman, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Chaz, for the invitation.
So tell us who you are and why you're running.
Well, I am Delegate Elizabeth Guzman. I proudly represent the 31st District, which includes parts of Prince William, the only majority-minority county in the Commonwealth, and Fauquier County, which is more red and rural. I flipped my district in 2017 from red to blue after 26 years. And I did that by engaging voters that they were disenfranchised throughout the process. For many years, I spoke with new voters. I spoke with people who not regularly vote, that they were voting in presidential elections, but not on elections. I went and introduced myself and reached out to every single voter where I could get a vote, even in rural Fauquier County, in Catlett and Casanova, where we don't have internet. And now, I've decided to run for Lieutenant Governor because I see that job as a promotion for an effective legislator. Someone who can hit the ground running on day one, because you understand how the legislative process works, and to build consensus, someone that can get things done as we recover from this pandemic. For the last 4 years since I got elected, I passed 24 bills and championed many more in the areas of healthcare, education, criminal justice reform, to protect the environment, to name a few. And I actually passed legislation when I was serving in the minority in a couple of years. So I think that your next lieutenant governor should be someone who has delivered on the promises that we made. And I accomplished all of those things by working together with my colleagues and even passing, as I was telling you earlier, and the Republican minority. And, someone who can be a proven leader. I am proud to have held leadership positions within the Democratic Party, as I represent Virginia, at the Democratic National Committee. I delivered the State of the Union rebuttal to Donald Trump in 2018, and I work in the Biden campaign as a member of the National Latino Leadership Council. I was a member also, a Virginia co-chair for the Bernie Sanders campaign. A leader within the House Democratic Caucus. I was elected in 2017 as the chair of the class of 2017, the most diverse slate of delegates in Virginia's history. And now I serve as the vice chair of education and the chair of the subcommittee of social service. And someone who has also, leadership skills in their professional career. I have 2 master's degrees, one in public administration, another one in social work. I went to school in this country where I was working full time and raised my children. And I bring with me 17 years of experience working in local government in Virginia, in children's services, school administration, and the past 7 years in the Community Services Board in the city of Alexandria.
So when it comes to your policies and political aspirations, who is someone in Virginia politics that you kind of look up to, dead or alive?
Well, for me, is Tim Kaine, definitely as a person who lived in Prince William County for the last 20 years. And when I was living here, I like to refer as before and after 287G. And for back then, during that time, talking about immigration, how to protect the rights of immigrants or new Americans, it was not a campaign issue for many politicians. So as an activist, I was attending protests, going to speak at the County Board of Supervisors meeting just to say, that policy was divisive. And I couldn't hear back from any of the representatives that I had then. However, I remember one Sunday, we were in a protest outside of the County Board of Supervisors, and Tim Kaine showed up, and said, I hear you. And I'm here to call out with you this individual who's trying to create division, and that is not the Virginia way. So for me, that day I understood that, representation matters, that your representatives should reflect, the values of your community. So I became a volunteer and I knock on doors and help Democrats up and down the ballot get elected.
So you were one of the most progressive candidates in this race, I would say, without a doubt, if not the most progressive. You've got a pretty transformative agenda for the Commonwealth for sure, but as you know, the position of lieutenant governor doesn't come with a lot of power. You break ties and wait for the governor to die. How can you, as lieutenant governor, go in ways beyond your enumerated powers to get your agenda done?
Well, just very good question. I could say that in my professional career, I've been in positions where I didn't have a job description, where I actually made the job description myself, and I've been successful. So when I decided to run for lieutenant governor was because I got sick and tired that many progressive policy, as you mentioned, that came out of the House got watered down or killed in the Senate. And, as a representative who is on the ballot every 2 years, you have to reflect and think, where is the disconnect? We represent the same constituency, but in my case, it's different, as I represent also Fauquier County, and I'm the only Democrat representing Fauquier County, where I share precincts with 2 state senators who are Republicans and 2 Democrats. However, as I'm talking to voters, I would say that my agenda reflects what my constituents want. So when I'm trying to make my case in the Senate, I hear them reciting the talking points from the business community. But who's the voice for the working families there? I look around and I could just, talk about the Senate and Commerce and Labor Committee. And I'm like, I don't have anybody, So when I decided to run for lieutenant governor is that, number one, I think that having the legislative experience is important, because you know how the system works. And second of all, I want to be an active caucus member. I told many voters when they asked me that question, that once I win the nomination, and in November, I will call the Senate Majority Leader, Dick Zaslow, and I will tell them that I want to start participating, in caucus meetings and trying to build the agenda for the upcoming legislative session, and have those conversations, with the members, and just understand what is their point of view, and also make my point of view as well, and see what those pieces of legislation like paid sick days is extremely important. I'm excited that this year I was able to work with Senator Barker, and we were able to provide a paid sick leave for home health care workers, which includes about 30,000 people in Virginia. However, there are 1.2 million Virginians waiting out there who do not have access to 1 day off that is paid. And that is not right. We should be proud that Virginia is number 1 for business, but we have to do better for the working families. And I do believe that there is a place where we can have good businesses and taking care of our employees as well. Because when we take care of our employees take care of our businesses. And finally, I think an important part, that I bring with me professionally, I work with budgets. Right now in my position, I oversee 200 staff operations where we provide services to individuals who are facing, mental and intellectual disabilities. We provide services to senior citizens, people who are facing substance abuse disorders. But part of my job is also to oversee a budget. And I'm the type of person who likes to address that proactively. I could tell you that under my management, I never furlough any employees. What I did is just trying to operate in a proactive way where I reallocate money in order to provide the same amount of services. And then as a local public servant, there are usually cuts every year. So I have to be thinking about how I'm going to provide the same amount of services with less resources. And that's what I want to bring as well. As the administration prepares the budget for every year, I've always seen that we have these conversations starting in December. And then we wait to January to then the House have a version, the Senate has a version. And I'm like, I really wanted to start having those conversations early on, where we can have an inclusive budget where everybody is on board. And then we will not have to spend just as much time, arguing and going over what is important or not when we spend more time prior to session.
You and Hala Ayala, who is also running for lieutenant governor, are somewhat similar on paper. You are in adjacent seats in Prince William. You're both first elected in 2017, unseating Republican incumbents. You're both running to become the first woman lieutenant governor in the Commonwealth. What is a major policy difference between you and Delegate Ayala?
So I could say, that I'm an immigrant, and I think that our struggles, and I will talk about myself, I bring with me my experience as an immigrant and being a person who has been able to make sacrifices to make ends meet and to work 3 jobs to live in a bedroom apartment with my daughter in Northern Virginia. Now, if you look at my policy, as you mentioned earlier, for me, it was clear when I decided to run for office and as I was knocking on doors that there were still people struggling as far as having to have 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. I think that's why I also introduce a paid sick days program every year since I got elected, because my constituents, as having conversations, one person told me, you know what, Elizabeth, I am happy to be able to get insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Thank you. However, my employer does not give me time off. So how can I use this health insurance when my employer is not giving me any paid time off? And I'm like, okay, boom, I had to deliver on this. And I've been fighting for that every year. So if you look at my agenda, I have been fighting for working families in Virginia since I got elected. Another, I think, difference is on the issues of criminal justice reform. I introduced and passed historic legislation in the past, like increasing the age of minors trial as adults. Something that I introduced since I got elected and I finally passed when we were in the majority, and even Republicans voted for the legislation, and this bill was supported by the administration as well. So I'm persistent. I'm not the type of person that is going to give up, because I like to think about the people that are waiting out there. And as a CASA's advocate, where I have to represent children that were, abused, sexually abused or domestic abuse, I've seen, I've spent time in the courtroom where I have seen how black and brown children go to a detention center, a white child goes home. So I've seen those disparities firsthand. I think that I'm the legislature also who introduced the boldest expungement bill that Virginia has ever seen. And my bill was sent to a study, and then it's not the bill that we voted on that will not be in effect until 2024. But I think that bill is going to be the floor, but not the ceiling. And we need to continue to deliver on more legislation. Finally, I would say that I've been a champion for public education. I've been able to be named the Legislator of the Year during 2020. And this year, I was the Friend of Education by the Virginia Education Association, which is the highest award that they could give to an elected official for my fight to reduce the caseloads for school counselors, for fighting for universal pre-K and for more resources for early childhood education, to fight for special education. Before I got there, nobody had these conversations either. So I'm glad that I was able to bring that. And I will conclude to say that I am a champion for the environment. I have gotten an A+ rating by the Sierra Club every year. And I've been a champion, for the environment in the Sierra Club during the 2019 session, and during the 2020 session, I was the legislative leader by the League of Conservation Voters. And, and I've been in the session not only to talk the talk, but actually to walk the walk. And you probably have seen that, where the tone of the conversation on the floor have changed. I remember my first year when a couple of delegates were bringing policies to empower ICE to implement the 287G program statewide. I've heard a delegate talk when they were talking about immigrants, refer to them as gang members or criminals or rapists. So when that happened once, I stood up and I speak out, and that has not happened anymore. And finally, I would say that I'm also a member of the National Hispanic Caucus of State Legislators, where I hold a leadership role as the chair of the Southern region, which I represent Hispanic legislators from 11 states. And I'm the only person who holds, a leadership position in the National Caucus.
At first, when you ran, when you announced that you'd be throwing your hat in the ring for lieutenant governor, you decided that you would not be filing for re-election in your seat in Prince William. Later, you decided that you would be double filing for both your seat in the House and your run for lieutenant governor. This was a move that surprised a lot of Democrats in Virginia from those I've talked to. What made you change your mind?
Well, I would say that it never changed my mind. I don't know how. I think there is one reporter, because consistently I was waiting and I told everybody that I will make a decision by March. And the reason was because I was waiting on redistricting data, and traditionally and you know this better than me, we get the data from the Census Bureau in February. And then we have to submit new maps by March or April. And the primaries for the House of Delegates and during the redistricting year are not held until August. But then Trump was in the White House. And of course, they didn't do the job in a timely manner. We have the pandemic. I mean, while I am excited that the reason why we didn't get that data on time is because more people participated, which is extremely important, and everybody should participate in the census. Then in February, we were informed that we will not get the data until September. So then that I start, reading the laws and see what it was allowed for me to do or not. And then I learned that the primaries will be the same day. So, and I said, okay, well, this is going to be historic. And I think the first person who was out there, and two actually that were out there publicly saying that they were seeking election for their seats, were Delegate Rasul and Delegate Carter. And I said, you know what? This is a equal society. If males are doing it, I'm going to do it too. And on the candidates awaiting my race, I was very transparent. I told them that I will make a decision by March. And when I decided to seek re-election for my seat, after I informed the leadership in my caucus, I immediately called every single candidate and let them know that I was running for my seat as well. And they were informed that I will make a decision by March. So that's how it happened. Now, there is footage out there, one, where I was in a summer, in the backyard, in the middle of a pandemic, and somehow, I got trapped in an answer, but that's not something that any other person has footage where I said that I was not seeking re-election.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
So your paid leave bill was recently passed, but only after being cut down tremendously in the Virginia State Senate from all essential employees to only a portion of healthcare workers. As Lieutenant Governor, are you going to continue to push for extending paid leave beyond that bill? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I think that we have a few champions, in the House already that have taken leadership on this issue. You have Delegate Paul Krisick, you have Delegate David Reed, Delegate Kathy Tran, that are going to continue the conversation in the House. But the House is on board. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
But the Senate, we have a champion who is State Senator Favola, who has been working with me for the last couple of years. And now we earn a new supporter, which is State Senator Barker. So I want to partner with them, and we are going to start, changing minds in the Senate, having the conversations of how important it is that it is not an anti-business policies, because actually, as I was fighting for this policy since 2018, I think during that 2019 session, this bill was sent to a study where I asked the Virginia, because I've been talking about this with the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, with the Fauquier Chamber of Commerce, Prince William Chamber of Commerce, and they were not against the bill because most of their members have this program. Now we go into Richmond, and then you have the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. So I asked that they needed to survey their members and ask them how many of them do not offer this program. And they learned that more than 65 of their membership already offer 40 hours of paid time off. And so I wanted to continue to have the conversations with the state senators, bring these individuals who have shared with me their personal stories, how this year we did a press conference, and we are earning more, we're building a coalition of many organizations that are adding up every year because they believe that this is the right policy. So I will talk to these state senators, bring these individuals who work in the hotel industry, that they work in fast food restaurants, that they work in restaurants, and that do not have one. I remember, this year, one lady that she worked in a fast food restaurant for the past 15 years, Chaz, and she does not have one day off. And anytime she gets sick or she just want to go out of town, to visit a family or her birthday, she is not getting paid. So I think that is wrong. And I hope to bring those stories, my personal stories, the coalition of organizations that are working with me and having important conversations in caucus and just make my case, to those state senators that are pushing against this legislation.
So Dominion Energy is a big part of Virginia politics, and it's something that every candidate in not just your race, but the gubernatorial and attorney general primaries, or at least most of them, have criticized. My question is, do you believe that Dominion Energy should stay in private hands?
Oh, okay. So I would say that I don't support that they should be writing the policy when we're talking about energy, number one. As far as this coming a public utility, right? If that's your question. I think that it will be more accountability and more transparency. So I think that's something we could talk about. But I would like, though, to Virginians to have options. That I would like to demonopolize it, though, if that's not the case, where you go and get the service for the best provider at the best affordable price. That's something that I would support. But if it has to become a public utility, of course, I'm a public administrator, working in government for a living. So I would support it because it will create a more transparent way and it will create more accountability and we'll be able to take action immediately by taking that responsibility and the leadership as well.
So on your site, you've already stated that you support the abolition of private prisons. This is an issue, though, like many other progressive hopes, that goes to die in the upper chamber. Why do you think that is? And do you see yourself taking an active role as Senate president to change that?
Well, absolutely. That is the right thing to do. We only have one private prison in Virginia. And we have that private prison has been administered by the GEO Group, which they have been sued across the country as not providing the right service and mismanage prisons in general. Now, I don't support, that private organizations are going to profit out of, people being in jail. I'm against that. So that's why I introduced legislation. I know the GEO Group's contract is going to expire in the next couple of years. So what I wanted to do is do a feasibility study where we are ready. And I believe Delegate Rosalynn Taylor introduced this study this year because I spoke with her about it because it is in her district. And we talked about these conversations and she has a valid concern, which is that this detention center create jobs. But what we want is good paying jobs, right? With benefits. So I think that we have to ensure, how much money it's going to cost for us to absorb that responsibility. And I like to talk about facts. I like to talk about data-driven decisions. So I would like to share that with the state senators and show them, look at the quality of service, see the amount of complaints that we have while them administering this prison. Then we're going to look at the money and we're going to see how much are we paying, because there's definitely an overhead by paying a contractor, instead of taking that responsibility. And at the end of the day, this is about people's lives. They are paying their crime, but we have to take care of them while they are in a prison. So they think that they should be treated with dignity. So I would like, to bring this information to the state Senate, and we are going to talk to them to make an informed decision. Now, I have this conversation offhand already with Senator Marsden, for example. And he has worked in a detention center and has worked in public safety for many years. And he said that this is something that he will support.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Delegate Elizabeth Guzman. I hope to have you on the show again, regardless of whether you're the nominee or not. Just as I said to Delegate Sam Rasool, though, if you are the nominee, I definitely want to have you on before the November election. Where can people find you and learn more about your campaign and candidacy?
Sure. Well, we are in social media. You can look up Elizabeth Guzman, and you will find me. And my webpage is www.elizabethguzman4spelloutvirginia.com. And you can find our social media handles there. And if you want to join our team, we would love to have you. And I want to remind voters that if this is the campaign that you believe in, and you agree with me that we can build something that's never been built before, which is elect as the first woman and woman of color as your next lieutenant governor, to talk to your friends, your family members, your colleagues, and remember that early voting starts April 24th.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Chaz. I appreciate it.